Welcome back to another episode of Silent Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review, and I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing Zulu from 1964. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. Outnumbered British soldiers do battle with the Zulu warriors at Rorke's Drift. Before I start my review, I want to say thank you for the movie suggestion to Pat M for suggesting this movie for us to review. Also, if you like this movie and you want to know more about the actual battle, there's a good heavy metal band who writes songs about historical military events such as battles or people. And they actually have a song about this, but the most important thing is that they have their own history channel on YouTube in the Sabaton History channel, and they basically go in depth into the actual battles with the actual historian. So starting off my review, I'm going to start off with my pros. For this movie, I liked how it was balanced as far as talking about each side. They portrayed the British soldiers as just wanting to survive the battle and the Zulu warriors as they were fighting for their land that was going to be taken away from them. So the movie was not making any side seem as they were the bad guys or inferior or superior. They actually played it fair, basically let each side have their own reason for fighting. My next pro is that the scenery. It was breathtaking, if I can say that. The way they shot the film, the sceneries, how they panned around, it was very pleasing to the eye. They could have faked the environment in a sound studio, but they didn't. They actually went the other route, and that benefited the movie in the cinematic aspect, especially the cinematography. And I believe that by doing that, it actually aided the story of the film and gave it more realistic feel to it, and it let you dive into the actual environment. Next, I want to talk about the story. It was an easy one to follow and simple. It had enough energy to keep me captivated for the whole movie and all the way through. Also, as far as the real battle went, it was accurate as far as the military movements and strategy that they used based on the location to use it as a defense and barricade themselves in it. So that was very precise about the movie. Yes, some things weren't as they showed it, but the battle strategy was fairly accurate. The next point is the characters. The two lieutenants, they began as opposites, but at the end, they actually shared the same view on war or battle. Also, Michael Caine did an excellent job in this movie by playing the lieutenant as something of a prick at the beginning, but then slowly coming around. Now, moving on to my cons. Let's talk about the inaccuracies. One of the biggest ones that really bothered me, the way they portrayed the character Hook. They made him seem like a deadbeat, but in reality, he was very influential and he was a very honorable person who was in the battle, and he was not anywhere how they painted it in the battle. If I would have done anything, I would have kept the character, but given him a fake name and not a real name based on a real soldier that was involved in the battle. For this, it seemed like they made a big mistake by doing that. It actually rubbed the family, and I would not dishonor the family of a soldier who participated in a big battle that way. So to me, this inaccuracy stood out, and it kind of really bothered me. Moving on. The pacing was good once the battle began, but if anything, I would say that it's kind of lagged at the beginning. I would have started the film with the original battle where the 1,400 British soldiers died. By doing this, I would actually have done something similar to, let's say, the movie We Were Soldiers, where they began with another battle before they moved into the present battle they were trying to talk about. And after this, then I would just continue with introducing the characters as the movie did in the beginning. And by that, you already established there was danger coming to Rorke's Drift, and these soldiers were not prepared and not aware of what was happening on the other side. Now, let's talk about some acting in the movie, especially on the behalf of the preacher's daughter. She was a bit annoying and kind of laughable. I mean, her acting was not that well. She was exaggerating her movements and stuff. I mean, it didn't make sense to have this character there when in reality, this character was never at Rorke's Drift post. It just seems to me that we could have done without her. She did not add or take anything away from the movie. In reality, why even have her? I believe that they just wanted to have her so that she can basically be the other side of the coin, where she was talking about how this was not fair and they should just avoid this at all costs, bloodshed. But I believe that the two lieutenants at the end also gave that point and felt strongly about it, and the message got through to us. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly, see how he saw this movie and what grade he gave this movie.
To begin off, I want to set the stage by saying I'm not familiar with the historical event that this movie is trying to portray. So because of that, my review is going to be based strictly on the movie and its purpose of entertaining. So with that out of the way, my pros for the film, I do agree with Sal that given when this movie was made, the battles depicted strategies that could have been used to deal with the sort of situations that the British Army found themselves in, being overwhelmed by just the sheer number of Zulus that were coming at them. And I think if anything, what I got the most out of this film, like many other films that Sal and I have reviewed as pertains to like throwback movies, how this movie influenced movies down the road and how they sort of handled battles like these. I could be mistaken, but while I was doing a little research on this film, I think Peter Jackson, he said that for one of his battles in his Lord of the Rings trilogy movies, it was actually influenced by some of the events that occurred in the movie Zulu. So again, it just comes back in full circle, back to the sort of theme that Sal and I normally points out, that even if a movie like this, where it might not be something that a lot of people are familiar with, just like myself, and the historical reference that again is trying to portray, and just maybe at the same time just be a source of knowledge, a source of just making this historical event better known through like a different medium versus a book, for example. I take great pleasure in knowing that, because now I can draw a line to this movie when I reference Lord of the Rings in a certain capacity, like I said, when it comes to the battle. So I think to me, that's the thing that I look to the most, that I found very influential about this film, which is the battle scenes. I do like how they portrayed the Zulus, in that they used the British Army's weapon against them. To me, that really indicated the sort of adaptation that they can use in war themselves from the Zulu side, how they can approach a situation that they're in to sort of give them an edge, despite already having an edge by having the number in their favor. Some of the conversations, they were good in establishing a few of the characters, but I think transitioning into my cons, I do feel that some of the characters' presence, they didn't have the sort of impact that maybe the movie was trying to have them have, and for that reason maybe they could have just been on screen less time or not be in the movie at all. And again, I don't know if that some of these characters were actually from the historical event, or were these new characters introduced into the film. If there were any creative liberty the people who made this film sort of just infused in there to maybe give it a little more dressing or make it look more aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, the characters to me, that were sort of like hit and miss depending on who we were following. If anything, maybe they should have just let us follow a few characters mostly throughout the films, and maybe see the sort of struggle that they're going on like a personal level, like just give us some one-on-one time with them and see them sort of contemplate and think about how they're going to go about getting their men out of this situation. I do agree with Sal that they could have built more context at the beginning of the film by introducing or leading us into a battle that would set up this situation where the British Army is overwhelmingly outnumbered, and they don't necessarily have to start off the film with a battle. It would be fine if they did, but maybe just lead into it somehow. And again, given that this movie was made in the 1960s, I would have accepted how they would have transitioned from like an onset of a battle like that, where they showed the onset of the battle, to them just transitioning that to the end of a battle and depicting the Zulu as the victor of that particular one. It doesn't have to be as elaborate, but I'm thinking of films like Gladiator, where there's this standoff at the beginning and then the two opposing sides clash, and then you see a little scruffle between some of the characters, and then you just start to get the sense that the British Army is getting overwhelmed, and then you transition into the end of that battle. And that's where like the beginning of this movie I felt could have just start. Just to give me some context, so I feel very invested in knowing what had happened before versus them just telling me, and then I can kind of see the challenge that the British Army had to deal with in order to even stand a chance of coming on top at the end. From a non-historical sort of reference perspective, I did find it kind of odd, given just how many Zulus there were that they just fell so easily towards the end of the film. They just kept on getting riddled with bullets. It felt like the Zulus at that point didn't have a strategy, which I found kind of odd. Again, given that they were using the British Army's weapon against them, that to me elevated them to a level that made me think, oh, these guys themselves have some sort of knowledge when it comes to battle. I felt kind of odd that they were just falling down like flies at the end. But again, I don't know if this is a reference to what actually happened in history, and if it did, then it's just something that I will have to accept because they were going in a direction of portraying what actually happened. But again, looking at it from just a movie entertainment sort of perspective, I found that to be kind of odd, given that the movie sort of portrayed these Zulus as one who can adapt to a situation. And again, my example is them using the British Army's weapons against them. I guess the last thing I would say about this movie is the pacing. I think just like Sal mentioned, I thought the first half of the film dragged on a little bit because there wasn't a whole lot of things happening in terms of battles. And I guess that's why having a battle somewhere in the midst of that first arc of the film would help, because then you would get the indication that something major is happening, and then there's this calm yet again before another storm hits. And that's where you get all the character conversations and the build up. So I thought like there was too much build up to a battle that I didn't have much context behind, in terms of like, okay, I get the sense that they're getting outnumbered, but I would have rather liked to see that happen. So while these characters are talking to one another about the situation that maybe they're not going to be able to do this, and I'm kind of like there experiencing this feeling with them. So because of that, the pacing I felt was a little off before I ever saw a battle in this film. Again, I don't know if they could have cut down time based on how much they wanted to portray that was based on actual events, but that's how I kind of saw it. I'm going to give the film a 6.5 out of 10. I'm weighing this based on everything that I've said, and again, the period in which this movie was filmed. I could imagine the sort of challenge that the creators of this film had to face in order to present this sort of situation in which we as an audience feel that this moment that they were trying to portray was a grand event because of this underdog sort of moment where the British Army found themselves in and how they were going to overcome the situation of being outnumbered. I'm pretty sure a lot of us have seen just movies and TV shows in modern times where one side just doesn't have the number of soldiers or men, fighters, however you want to categorize them, to overcome, and at the very end they somehow make it out alive. So I give the creators prop for their efforts, and again, if anything, the sort of influence that the battles that they were trying to portray, how they influence the many battles that were portrayed in TV series or movies down the road. Like I said earlier, I think one of the movies from The Lord of the Rings was influenced by these battles. So kudos to this film for being able to be yet another one of those titles that had a cultural impact in the entertainment industry.
There is a lot of movies that were influenced by this movie. Some of the movies that we come to know, for example, like 300 and other movies that show overwhelming odds, it just gives you this idea of like the struggle, what they were facing, and they endured it till the end. For this movie, it is kind of accurate, but at the same time, I admit there is some beefing up to the movie. For example, we see a lot of British soldiers die, and in reality, only 14 actually died. On the Zulu end, we see a bunch of them fall after wave after wave, and there's bodies everywhere. In reality, around an estimated 500 to 800 Zulus actually died. I'm not saying that it's not a big number, but I'm just saying that the way they portrayed it in the movie, it was like they were getting hit all the time. There was a few waves, and it only lasted until the next morning. They didn't attack after daybreak. And yes, there is some inaccuracies. For example, the part where the Zulus start chanting or singing, and then the British soldiers start singing back, that never happened, but it does add this little element to the movie. The morale was low, but by doing this, the soldiers kind of like lifted themselves up and kept fighting. And to me, yeah, if it kind of motivates the movie, it's fine. But the thing that they did with the character Hook, by portraying him a different way than he actually was, or giving that character a real soldier's name, that didn't rub me the right way. So for me, I'm going to give this movie a solid 7 out of 10. It's a movie that if you're a fan of historical events, you can watch this. But like I said before, by all means, look at the Sabaton History channel. The links is going to be below. They give you a roughly rundown of the historical event that happened. Then watch this movie so you can have a visual aid, and also watch it for Michael Caine. So I guess that does it for this review of the movie Zulu. Please join us next time where we're going to review The Good Son.
If I let you go, you think you could fly?
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.